The NFL once had a player so talented that coaches called him generational. A tight end who ran a 4.46 at 238 pounds. Made the Pro Bowl. His coach said he was the best player he'd ever coached. But somehow, he lost it all and gone from the league for an entire year. What you're about to find out is something most fans don't know.
So how old were you when you started using drugs?
I was 15, sophomore year of high school.
Darren Waller was every coach's dream. Georgia Tech recruit, first-round prospect. Gil Brandt called him a draft steal. But on April 30th, 2015, draft day, something didn't add up. Wide receivers who ran slower started going in the third round. Fourth round passed, then the fifth, and Waller kept waiting. By the time Baltimore called his name in the sixth round, he was the 204th pick overall.
Number 204, the Baltimore Ravens select Darren Waller, wide receiver from Georgia Tech.
The 27th wide receiver taken out of 27. Scouts had seen the red flags. Georgia Tech had suspended him for the season opener in 2013, then did it again in 2014, this time for 2 games. Same reason both times. The kind of issues teams don't ignore no matter how talented the player is. So why the drop? While rookies were watching film, Waller was somewhere else entirely. By the time Waller got to Baltimore in 2015, he had it down to a science. Wake up, get high before heading to the facility, go through practice like everything was normal, come home, and do it all over again. Opioids and lean during his Ravens years, whatever he could get his hands on. Pills were his favorite, but he'd add alcohol when he needed it. Up to 20 pills a day at his worst. $100 a day just to keep the routine going. It was the kind of habit that took over everything. He'd hide the pills in his car, always checking the rearview mirror, always worried about getting caught, but completely unable to stop. He was getting high every single day. He was always the last one to show up at the facility and the first one out the door. Teammate Lorenzo Taliaferro had the same habits, and they'd spend hours playing video games together and getting high. Nobody said anything, and nobody stopped it. His parents started getting notifications via FedEx every time he failed a test. His mother, Charlena, would hear the delivery truck pull up and her stomach would drop.
We see different letters come from the NFL. That's when I knew something was going on. I didn't know exactly what I could put my finger on, but I knew, the failed drug test.
She dreaded opening those envelopes. The NFL knew. So why did they keep letting him play? If you've ever watched someone with everything throw it away, you know exactly how this feels. Talent doesn't matter when the person carrying it doesn't believe they deserve it. Here's something most sports content never covers: the culture around NFL locker rooms and prescription access. Painkillers get handed out like candy after games, and players swap pills in training rooms like they're trading cards. Coaches preach toughness, play through pain, don't be soft. When players take pills to do exactly that, the system acts surprised when addiction follows. It's a cycle built on pressure, access, and isolation, and Waller was drowning in it. In his rookie year with Baltimore, Waller appeared in 6 games before landing on injured reserve, but the real injury wasn't on the field. During his rookie camp, head coach John Harbaugh told the team, "If you don't love football, just walk out." Waller almost did. He failed his first test a few months into the season, then a second, then a third, 3 failed drug tests in less than 2 years. On July 1st, 2016, the NFL suspended him for 4 games, his first violation of the substance abuse policy. The league has a program for these players to get chances, treatment options, and support systems. That's why they kept letting him play. The policy is built to help players get clean, not just punish them for struggling. But the suspension didn't change anything. Waller kept using and failed another test. On June 30th, 2017, the league suspended him for the entire season. His career was seemingly over at 23 years old. Most players in that position would panic, but Waller's first reaction was relief. He later said he'd rather the league put him out of his misery than look like a quitter and admit he didn't want to play anymore. In Baltimore, he described himself as a vegetable just existing, not living. So he checked into rehab that first month of suspension, thinking he could fix it quickly, get back to football, and put this behind him. But in 3 weeks, he relapsed. He walked right out of the facility and went back to using drugs. The year away wasn't some smooth recovery story. It was messy, full of setbacks nobody talks about, full of moments where he tried to pull himself together but couldn't. He tried to come back, but couldn't do it. There was this moment about 2 months into the suspension where Waller almost didn't come back at all. He was sitting in his apartment in Baltimore, high out of his mind, completely isolated from everyone. He thought to himself, this was it. This is how it ended. Not because of football, just because he couldn't stop. The moment passed, but barely. August 2017, the day of the Ravens' first preseason game. Waller had just moved out of his apartment that morning, and on his way out of town, he stopped by his dealer's house one last time. He swallowed the pills and drove to a Walmart parking lot less than a quarter mile from the Ravens' practice facility. He sat in his Jeep Grand Cherokee waiting for them to kick in. His head started spinning. He felt like he was going to throw up or faint or both. And then he fell asleep. 4 hours later, he woke up drenched in sweat. The pills had been laced with a substance, one of the leading causes of overdose deaths in America. For the first time in his life, Darren Waller was very afraid. He felt closer to death than he'd ever been. Sitting alone in that parking lot, a quarter mile from the building where he was supposed to be a professional athlete, he realized he almost didn't wake up. That moment didn't fix everything, but it changed something. 1 month later, Waller checked himself back into rehab at McLean Borden Cottage in Camden, Maine, a 30-day inpatient program supported by the NFL. This time was different. He stayed and finished the program. When he walked out 30 days later, he didn't rush back to football. He took a job stocking shelves at a local grocery store, attended 12-step meetings, and got a sponsor. His sobriety date became August 11th, 2017. On August 7th, 2018, the NFL reinstated Darren Waller. Baltimore waived him the next day and signed him to their practice squad. For most of the year, he ran scout team cards, pretending to be the other team's offense while the real players prepared for games. This wasn't framed as redemption. Yet, this was a gamble nobody believed in. A former 6th-round pick who'd been suspended for a full year, who'd almost died in a parking lot, who was one failed test away from being banned forever. But there was one more thing Waller had to face, and it had nothing to do with football. The pills had started when Waller was 15 years old. In a friend's house after football practice, his body was sore from practice, and someone offered him oxycodone just for the pain. It worked. The soreness disappeared, but so did something else. That voice in his head. The one telling him he wasn't good enough, didn't fit in, wasn't black enough because of how he talked, how he dressed, how he carried himself. Wasn't white enough either. Wasn't cool enough. Never enough. The pills made that voice quiet, so he kept taking them. Alcohol came at 16, marijuana around the same time. By college, the list had grown. By the NFL, it was completely out of control. But rehab wasn't just about detoxing. For the first time, Waller had to confront the real question. Why the pills in the first place? Why did nothing ever feel like enough? Why did success on the field make him feel worse instead of better? He'd been running from who he was since he was 15 years old. Football was supposed to make him cool, make him fit in, make him enough, make people see him differently, make him see himself differently. But it never did, because the problem wasn't football. It was believing he didn't deserve any of it. The talent, the opportunity, the success, none of it felt real because he didn't feel real. Sobriety became about rebuilding his identity beyond the sport. Not Darren Waller the tight end or the draft pick, just Darren Waller the person. Without the pills to quiet the noise, without football to validate him, without anything external to prove he was enough. Just him. Learning to believe he was enough exactly as he was. The quiet simplicity of working at that grocery store was exactly what he needed for that. No stadium lights, no interviews, no fans recognizing him, no pressure to perform. Just honest work and hard-won progress one day at a time. Stocking shelves, showing up on time, doing the work, building a foundation that had nothing to do with football. He later said something that didn't make sense to most people.
I felt better about my life at that point than I ever did playing in the NFL prior to that.
Recovery wasn't about performance. It was about identity. In 2019, with the Raiders, Waller exploded. 90 receptions, 1,145 yards, 5 100-yard games, breaking the Raiders franchise record for a tight end.
Whips it, end zone, touchdown! A hot pass handled by Darren Waller.
After week 1, Gruden told reporters, "We're going to get the ball to Waller. Waller's special. But 2020 was when the world saw who he'd become. 107 receptions. The kid who used to show up last and leave first now had more catches than any tight end in Raiders history. 1,196 yards, 9 touchdowns, Pro Bowl. Only 6 tight ends in NFL history have ever hit 100 receptions in a single season. Waller became the 6th. He broke the franchise record held by Tim Brown and Todd Christensen's tight end record. A kid who spent a year stocking shelves was rewriting franchise history. In Week 13 against the Jets, he put up 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, the most receiving yards by a tight end in Raiders franchise history. That was the same month 3 years earlier when he'd been sitting in his apartment high out of his mind thinking it was over. After that game, John Gruden said something that shocked people. He's the best player I've ever coached.
Got gold jacket ability. There's no doubt about it.
This was the same coach who had Jerry Rice, Warren Sapp, Tim Brown, Keyshawn Johnson, and Brett Favre on his rosters. When reporters asked Waller about it, he just smiled. "Dang, that's crazy," he said that. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. In 2020, Waller also started the Darren Waller Foundation, which provided over $1 million in treatment grants to more than 80 individuals in Las Vegas. Waller personally visited treatment centers and schools and shared his story with high school football teams through a program called Wall Talks. He showed up for people the way others showed up for him. Recovery wasn't just about stopping. It was about rebuilding who you are when the drugs aren't there to quiet the noise. So what does it say about how we build athletes that it took almost losing everything to become who he was? The NFL has a substance abuse policy, but it also has a culture. The gap between those two things is where players like Waller fall through. It's a cycle built on pressure, access, and isolation. And it's not unique to Waller. Now the 6th round drop makes perfect sense. Those character concerns that knocked him down the board weren't just red flags. They were real addiction issues that teams knew about before the draft. When Baltimore sent their director of college scouting to grill him at the East-West Shrine game, Waller didn't lie. He was honest and upfront about what he was dealing with. The Ravens took a chance knowing the risks. GM Ozzie Newsome spent 15 to 20 minutes on the phone with him before making the pick. They thought they could help him. It almost didn't work. He failed tests, got suspended twice, and almost overdosed in a parking lot. But recovery made the comeback possible. The draft day drop wasn't a mistake. It was the market pricing in reality. Waller proved that with the right support, the right honesty, and the right daily commitment, even a 6th round pick with character concerns can become one of the best tight ends in football.
It's an amazing feeling, and I just want to consistently show up as myself. Becoming someone that makes everyone around them better is what counts.
Darren Waller's story ended with a Pro Bowl and a foundation that's changed lives. Not every player gets that ending. Next time, we're looking at a Hall of Fame career that almost ended before it started, and the moment one phone call changed everything. If this story hit different, drop a comment with who you think we should cover next, and subscribe so you don't miss it.